My name is Hamza Salam and you're watching the Pakistan Daily. Today we're going to speak to Senator Mushahid Hussain Saab, the chairman of the Senate Defence Committee, and we're going to speak about the 48th Council of Foreign Ministers session which was just held in Islamabad. Mushahid Saab, the Chinese foreign minister attended the OIC session, and this was the first time in history that a Chinese foreign minister attended an OIC Council of Foreign Ministers session. So how do you view this development, especially in regards to China's relationship with the Muslim world?
First of all, Hamza Sahab, welcome to Islamabad. You come at a very important time. There's the onset of spring, there are the winds of change, and we have had a very historic conference of the OIC in which we saw for the first time, and I call it a historic first, China's participation in the OIC formal conference of foreign ministers. And I think it was befitting recognition of China's role, China's support, and China's relationship with the Muslim world, which is quite long-standing. And we had 46 ministers out of a total of 57 countries taking part. And I think this is probably the most important international diplomatic conference in Pakistan since the 1980 Conference of Foreign Ministers on Afghanistan after the Soviet occupation. So this was an important conference, and what we are seeing is that China's role shows that this region where Pakistan is located and we are playing a pivotal role, this region is being transformed and there are new realities emerging.
Very nice. So are you satisfied with the overall outcomes of the 48th OIC Council of Foreign Ministers session?
First of all, I'm pleased that it was held at all, given the context. There was a political context, there were concerns, and I think we managed to pull off a major diplomatic feat. And this is about Pakistan and Pakistan's role. So I would say it was a good conference, it was a successful conference, and a well-organized conference, and with huge participation. And it has set some parameters for the future, and I think we need to push those parameters.
Analysts have claimed that Pakistan has pulled off a diplomatic masterstroke in the Islamabad Declaration, in which the OIC member states have demanded that India reverses its actions which it undertook on the 5th of August of 2019. So do you think that this will be enough to influence India to change the status of Kashmir?
I think the message was very clear, not just to India but also to the international community, including our friends in the West, that on certain issues the Muslim world can speak with one voice, and that voice is a powerful voice, whether it's the issue of Kashmir, India's illegal annexation, whether it's the issue of Palestine, and whether it's the broader issue of camaraderie among the Muslim countries.
Okay, and recently on the 9th of March, we saw an accidental missile fire from India towards Pakistan. So do you think that this was a genuine mistake by India, or is India vying for war? And if it was a mistake, what does that say about the professionalism of the Indian Army?
I would say that the jury is still out. Whether it is an issue of a mistake, which means it's a monumental incompetence of the Indian security system, that they misfired a missile which could have led to war, which could have led to air crashes, which could have caused other major accidents, so which have been avoided. And if it was deliberate, sending a message to Pakistan or testing out Pakistan's air defenses, testing out how Pakistan would respond rapidly in such a scenario, then again that's a cause for concern. But overall, I would say that it does put India in a very bad light, because out of the blue, out of nowhere, and more so after India itself sought a ceasefire with Pakistan on the line of control last year, which is still holding. This action took place, and also in the context that they have had skirmishes and clashes with the Chinese People's Liberation Army, which India itself provoked. And now India is now talking to them and having a dialogue with them. So in that context, it does put India in a bad light. It shows that the Indian system in terms of security and defense is certainly not working, and there's something wrong somewhere which they need to investigate and also to inform us accordingly and inform the international community that how such a threat to peace, security and stability can be averted in the future.
Okay, so we're seeing various OIC states, including the UAE, Turkey, and Egypt, who are developing and strengthening their ties with Israel. So, do you think we can expect any unity from the OIC member states and the OIC in regards to the Muslim world's relationship with Israel, especially in the context of the conflict in Palestine?
I would say that I would segregate the three states. Turkey has had a long-standing relationship with Israel. They recognized Israel in the 50s when they were part of joint NATO, part of the Western Alliance. And of late the relations were bad, but now their recent improvement after the visit of their President Isaac Herzog to Turkey. Egypt developed that relationship after the Camp David Accords in 1979. So that is, they recognized Israel then as part of that arrangement under American auspices. And UAE has done it recently, a year or so ago. So the UAE case is different. But that does not affect the broader stand of the Muslim countries, particularly Pakistan, on Palestine, because we are very clear that there is a linkage between what is happening in Palestine with what is happening in Indian occupied Kashmir. And both are issues of United Nations resolutions. And both are issues of self-determination, both are issues of illegal occupation, and both are issues of redrawing the demographic balance by the respective occupation forces. Israel in the case of Palestine and India in the case of Kashmir. So we are consistent in our stand, and our stand is not linked with other Muslim countries. Our stand predates the OIC because it was the Qaeda-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah who talked of the Palestinian right of self-determination and an independent state of Palestine. So our stand is very consistent and very principled.
But we're seeing a lot of activity in the Middle East, and you also mentioned a new strategic triangle with China also entering the scenes. So, how do you view the new evolving situation in the Middle East?
I think we are seeing a very historic development, probably the most important development in the region in the last, I would say, 70 years or so. And what we are seeing is that the retrenchment of American power from this region, the Middle East region, the Muslim world, the broader Muslim world of which Pakistan is a part. And we are seeing the rise of China also. Actually, it's a resurgence of the Asian century, the 21st century, which Allama Iqbal had talked of, that see the sun rising in the east. So the sun is really rising and shining brightly in the east, which is the rising of the Asian century. And in that context, you can see that events for the first time in 70 years after World War II are being driven by countries in the region. For example, there is an element of reconciliation and rapprochement. Turkey and Saudi Arabia, Turkey and the UAE, Saudi Arabia and Iran, UAE and Syria, Saudi Arabia and Syria also. So, this is a very significant development. And already you can see that Saudi Arabia and the People's Republic of China are discussing ways and means. Perhaps they can have trade in their oil, not in US dollars, but in the Chinese currency. Because 25% of China's imports of oil are from Saudi Arabia. And Saudi Arabia has also extended an invitation to President Xi Jinping to visit Saudi Arabia after Eid. So, and Pakistan and Saudi Arabia, because they are the hosts of OIC, they played a very coordinated role in inviting the Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi to the OIC Islamic Foreign Ministers. And Pakistan has always been a bridge between different countries, a role we played 50 years ago between China and the United States. So in that context, I see the potential of this strategic triangle: Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, and the People's Republic of China. Because there is compatibility of interests, they have similar worldviews, and we also see a strategic shift in Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia's domestic policies also, and their foreign policy also, I mentioned that, and how Saudi Arabia's relations have been improving with Iran and Turkey. And within their own country, I think under the leadership of their Crown Prince, Mohammed bin Salman, they have opened up Saudi society. There's an opening up and liberalization of Saudi society, economy, culture, curbing of religious extremism, empowerment of women, promotion of women's rights. So Saudi Arabian society is being changed, and I think that's almost like a silent revolution taking place in Saudi Arabia. So given this context, I feel that a huge transformation is in the offing. During World War II, there was an agreement between the US and Saudi Arabia, oil for security. They will buy cheap oil from Saudi Arabia, uninterrupted supply of oil. In return, they will guarantee the Saudi Arabian security or the security of the Gulf. That is no longer the case. So that is why I feel that regional countries will shape the future of the region, not outside powers like the United States. And China already has a deep relationship with the Muslim countries because of the Belt and Road Initiative, and the Foreign Minister of China has already mentioned that they are willing to invest another $400 million in different Muslim countries. So I think that it's a huge transformation in the offing, and Pakistan is a pivotal player in this transformation because we are close to the Muslim world, and we are also the center of gravity in the region, given our relationship with China and CPEC and regional connectivity.
Can we expect any new development between the relationship between Pakistan and Saudi Arabia?
Yes, I think that Saudi Arabia has been investing in Pakistan, and it is expected that the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman, he will likely pay a visit to Pakistan after Hajj. So that would also be very significant. President Xi Jinping going to China, President Xi Jinping of China going to Saudi Arabia, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman coming to Pakistan. The summer of 2022 is going to be very interesting, and we already have a very strategic relationship with Saudi Arabia, and with Saudi Arabia and China now developing a strategic relationship. So this strategic triangle can be a very important factor in promoting regional connectivity, diplomatic interface, and also broader cooperation at the political level among Muslim countries. And these three countries can be the driving force of that: Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, and China, as part of this strategic triangle.
Very interesting. And Mushahid Sahab, let's talk a bit about the conflict in Ukraine, especially in the context of Prime Minister Imkan Khan's visit to Moscow and his meeting with Vladimir Putin. So recently what we've seen is that Pakistan's relationship with the US has taken a downturn. We've been sort of alienated by Western countries. So how do you think this will play out between Pakistan's long-term relationship with the West?
Well, Pakistan has a relationship with the United States which is fluctuating according to the situation in the region. With China, it is a strategic relationship. With the US, it's a tactical relationship, and largely from the US side. We have a good relationship with the European Union countries, and they've given us the GSP Plus also, and we would like to strengthen that relationship. Basically, the conflict in Ukraine is seen as part of this emerging Cold War, where the US tried to push NATO right on the borders of Russia. Although there was a commitment made apparently in February 1990 by the US Secretary of State James Baker to Mikhail Gorbachev. They cite a conversation of 9th of February 1990 where James Baker, the US Secretary of State, said NATO will not expand an inch eastward. Of course, it was not in writing, it was verbal. But the fact is that this was the... Of course, we cannot condone Russian invasion or Russian aggression. That having said, because we are very clear on that. And that's why Pakistan did the right thing by abstaining. And so did China, by the way. But we also feel that it's not just a simple conflict. There is the larger geopolitical aspect also. And what bothers me also as a person from Pakistan and from the Muslim world and from the region is the blatant double standards. when we talk of Western media coverage of Ukraine as compared to Afghanistan and Iraq, they say that Ukraine is a civilized country and so forth. And recently, the European Union has announced that people from Ukraine can settle in the refugees. They can work there, they can have access to employment, to health, to education. So those rights were denied to Muslim refugees or African refugees. So our principles, which the West espouses, are they inspired more by actual principles which are in the UN Charter and the UN Declaration of Human Rights, or race, religion, nationality, the color of your face, that is paramount? So these are questions which millions of people in Africa, in Asia, in the Arab world are asking in the aftermath of the Ukraine crisis, because there's a certain double standard. And the way the Ukrainian refugees have been welcomed with open arms by the Europeans, that was not the case for other refugees from our part of the world. The only exception, I would say, was Germany, under Chancellor Merkel, who was a great stateswoman, who opened up her doors. But the rest of the European Union is, I'm sorry, disappointing a lot of people internationally, because there's a yawning chasm between what is professed and what is practiced.
So Mushahid Sahab, the OIC session also spoke about Islamophobia, and the UN has also declared an international day to raise awareness about Islamophobia. So do you think these steps will be enough to curb Islamophobia, especially in the West?
I think this is a very major development. It's a step forward, and I think it goes to Pakistan's credit that it was our initiative, our efforts, that this issue has now come to the surface. People like me have been talking about Islamophobia for the last 15-20 years, and we have been talking of double standards, and we are saying that when we talk of anti-Semitism, at the same level we should also talk of Islamophobia. But I'm glad that now there is a recognition internationally at the level of the United Nations that Islamophobia is a real issue, and that issue demands urgent attention of the same kind that is linked to anti-Semitism. And for us, it's not just in the West. We live in Pakistan. What's happening in our neighboring country, India? Muslims being lynched, Muslims being demonized, the demographic balance in occupied Kashmir being changed. And Dr. Gregory Stanton, who is the head of this organization, the Genocide Watch, he said that a genocide may be in the making in India, starting with Kashmir and Assam. This is an American organization, and he gave this testimony to the US Congress in January 2022. So Islamophobia is a real issue. It's not just an academic issue or a philosophical issue. It's an issue which affects the lives of Muslims, not just in the West, but in countries like India, where this kind of religious extremism, the Hindutva ideology, has now been institutionalized. And as Arundhati Roy, the Indian writer, rightly said in an op-ed in the New York Times, the RSS is the state in India today, and an architecture of fascism is being erected in India. That is the threat. So I think this is a major step forward. First, draw attention to that, then recognition of Islamophobia, that it's a legitimate issue, and then concrete steps will follow. And I think that based on what has happened with the declaration of 15th of March as the International Day of Islamophobia, Pakistan should mobilize other countries, public opinion in the West, in the East, globally also on this issue.
YouTube पर Googly TV देखने के लिए youtube.com की सर्च बार में Googly TV टाइप करें। Googly TV के पेज पर सुर्ख रंग के सब्सक्रिप्शन वाले बटन पर क्लिक करना ना भूलिए। YouTube पर अपलोड होने वाली वीडियो से बाखबर रहने के लिए बेल आइकॉन पर क्लिक कीजिए। आपको हर नई आने वाली वीडियो के बारे में नोटिफिकेशन मौसूल हो जाएगा।